We are going 16 consecutive days, looking at the schedule, alphabetical order. We have done Arizona, we have done Arizona State, and we have done Baylor. And today, Craig, we break down BYU.
Yeah, Cougars a really nice season a year ago, and again, this is not a prediction in February on how their schedule is going to go. It's just taking a look at them because they came out a week or so ago, or I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, and so just taking a glance at the way they're set up. Obviously, TV time still to be announced for all these games, but we do have the skeleton of how the dates will work, and so I guess start off taking a look at that non-con. Portland State is a money-win game. They're right out of the gates, so I'm sure they'll be, feverish in Provo to watch their team smack around Portland State as they paid to do. Then turn around and the following week have Stanford, a little ACC Big 12 action in Provo, and then hit the road to East Carolina for kind of a random-ish road trip that they probably won't be making too often again in the future to take on the Pirates of ECU. So that is their first setup, but the interesting thing is they have a bye in week 3. So that's kind of early, no? I mean, I don't know what I would like that necessarily if I was BYU, but that's the way that it worked out on their schedule. They'll play Saturday, August 30th, Saturday, September 6th, and then Saturday, September the 20th. So a very early bye there for BYU, and I guess 3 games in that first month of the season. They have the bye before East Carolina, road games at East Carolina, then they get Colorado, of course, to open up conference play. Portland State used to throw the ball around. Was that Mouse Davis back? And again, I'm dating myself. They used to score a ton. But that is it. Yeah, come play us in Provo. We'll win the game. We'll give you a check, and then we move on to your next game. I like that game early. I like the fact that they're playing a Power 4 school non-conference game against Stanford in week number 2. Yeah, I mean, they're not afraid to schedule tough teams. And not that Stanford's been a tough team, but last year was SMU in that big non-conference game that obviously did not benefit BYU probably the way that it should in the playoff conversation. I think people might be split on whether they deserve to be in the actual 12-team field or whether they deserve to get more love to be in the field. I think some people, like myself, feel like they deserve to get far more conversation. I don't know that they necessarily deserve to be in it. I think you can have that argument, and depending on who you are and what, you can go in circles on that, and everybody did. Everybody went in circles on that, but I think everybody agreed ultimately that however you felt about BYU, they did not get their share of respect the way a lot of other schools did when it came to those final spots. But, they've played Arkansas as of a couple years ago in the non-conference. I mentioned last year with SMU, and so now we know they played Baylor here recently, and now and various other teams, it's Stanford. So that'll be a nice little matchup with the ACC, like I said. So, yeah, it's a respectable opening slate. The bye week that early is weird. So I don't know how much, I guess when we talk to Kalani Sitake again, we can actually ask him his feelings on that, but he's kind of a no-frills guy, so I don't imagine it's really something he's worried that much about. It's just odd timing. So Portland State, Stanford, and then a trip to East Carolina. I think you're feeling pretty good about 3-0. Maybe not knowing too much about Stanford, you'd say maybe there's a possibility there, but it'll be in Provo, so I think you feel really good about being able to navigate your non-conference schedule successfully.
Got to be a TV thing, you would think. And we'll have Kalani Sitake, of course, other coaches eventually over the next 2 or 3 months when it comes to spring football. Probably a football thing for some reason that they have that early. Who knows? Maybe it's something that teams start to do. All right, so those are the first 3. Those are the non-conference games. Portland State, Stanford at home, East. And I wonder if Stanford, if they're ever going to become relevant again. Like a team that I just always had such great respect, obviously back in the day, Bill Walsh, but even other coaches that have been there, Jim Harbaugh, David Shaw, but they really have kind of just been there in football. So at East Carolina, they open up conference at Colorado. 2 teams that last year were 2 of the better surprise, feel-good stories within the Big 12.
Yeah, and
If you're looking for a wheeled cooler, this is the Arctic 52-quart ultralight wheeled cooler. I hauled it on a deck, I hauled it downstairs, upstairs, grass, gravel, sandy road, mud puddles, the whole bit. And I gotta say, it is pretty darn tough. I really do like the wheels and the tow handle. It's easy to hold on to, even when full. It made it 6 full days with ice present, still keeping cool enough temperatures to keep drinks cold. This is a great cooler. And if you're looking for a new wheeled cooler that tows really nicely, this is a great option.
Because of that early bye week, it's just interesting that they go a pretty good stretch without having another one. It'll be all the way until November the 1st. So, I mean, it's like a month, a little over a month between bye weeks, but I guess that gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wait, no, that's not right. Where am I jumping out here? Okay, so that would give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight games in that second wave, if you know how I kind of break them down. So you've got where most people have like 5 games and 5 games, or like 4 games, 4 games, and then 4 games, or it's 5, 4 and 3, or it's 5, 3 and 4, or whatever it may be. Theirs is 2, and then it's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row, and then the second bye week, and then the 4. So it's just very different compared to most schedules. But yeah, it's Colorado to open things up in Big 12 play in Boulder. Don't know how good or not they'll be. You've got West Virginia at home with Rich Rod, so that'll be an interesting game. Just question marks about where the Mountaineers are, but I think there's an excitement there that hasn't been there in a long time. Road trip to Arizona. I think you feel okay about that. Utah at home, and obviously that throw the records out as we saw last year with the latest example. Those two teams hate each other in the most fun and competitive type of way. And then travel to Iowa State, and then you finally get your second break there. So, yeah, you'll have trips to Colorado, Arizona, Iowa State, home games with West Virginia, Utah. Or I should add East Carolina in the road trip. So 4 road trips and 2 home games in that second little stint that you have between bye weeks. So that's kind of interesting that you're going to be traveling as much as you are there in that middle portion of the schedule. And some teams that we just don't know. Like, based on last year, you will beat every single one of those teams that you've got lined up in that second wave. You did beat most of those teams.
Well, you did beat Colorado in a bowl game.
You beat Utah. Yeah. And I don't remember off the top of my head of everybody that they played, but because I don't remember if they played West Virginia or not. But, yeah, I think you feel great about your potential to beat all those teams.
They did not, by the way. They did not play them.
Okay. But then you do have, Iowa State on the road. So that'll be a game that certainly on paper looks like pretty much up to this point, and you didn't play them last year either, so that'll be a newer matchup. But pretty much up to this point, I think that's the game you're most fearing. I mean, Utah's Utah regardless. But Colorado and Arizona and West Virginia, I mean, I don't think you're feeling like you can't beat those teams no matter what. No matter if you're looking at it from last year's perspective, if you're looking at all their changes, like, you feel like you're one of the best teams, if not the best team in the Big 12. So I think all the way up until about mid to late October, when you strap them up against Utah and then turn around and go to Ames, I think you're feeling really good about your chance to be unbeaten at that point.
Utah, which we know is a great rivalry, at Iowa State and at Tech. I'm just saying, that 3-game stretch right there, but we're going in sections, I know, but that's a heck of a nice little threesome right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like, I mean, if Colorado turns out to be really, really good, and that trip to Boulder maybe looks a little bit different. If West Virginia's a big turnaround, and look, they don't have to be like a massive turnaround. They were still a bowl-ish type team with Neil Brown. So it's not like they're coming out of the dregs of like wanting, 1 or 2, like they're not Kennesaw State. Like, they have to be completely rebuilt. He could get them turned around in a hurry, especially in this NIL era. But yeah, on paper, you feel great up until just getting into that stretch there that you mentioned. Utah, at Iowa State, break, and then at Texas Tech, who obviously is being looked at as, one of the better teams on paper in the league. It's another team you did not play last year, so there's going to be a lot of new on this schedule for them compared to last season's schedule. But, so that Texas Tech road game will start that third and final leg. In that third and final leg, you've got some Texas flavor there in those first two with the trip to Lubbock, home against TCU, at Cincinnati, home versus UCF is how you will close it out. So you do have 6 road games, which is not what everybody has. Everybody always tries to kind of like get it to the 7-5, right? If you can possibly
4-8,
can.
yeah.
But you do have 6 road games, 5 of those coming in Big 12 play, of course, and then that East Carolina game. That sort of feels like almost an outlier in a way. But I think that late October, early November, that 4-game stretch of Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, and trips to Ames and Lubbock there in the middle of that seems like it would be kind of your pivotal stretch of the schedule. But, of course, who knows where they will be at that point.
5 of 7 games in the midsection of their schedule are road games.
Yeah.
5 of them. And, they open up with those 2 home games, and then they have 2 of the last 3 at home. But that's a chunk. And here's the thing. Based on history, we don't know who's going to be better or about the same or as good as we expect in the Big 12. I think this year, it might settle down a little bit. But, my God, that's a dumb thing to say based on the history we've seen pre-expansion or pre-realignment or whatever else when it comes to the Big 12.
Let's try to make it very clear this is not a prediction as much as it is just taking a look at it and giving our initial thoughts on it because it is going to change. It'll look like a lot different. There will be an Arizona who you expect to be pretty good that's not good at all. There will be a BYU who or an Arizona State who you don't expect much out of at all, and they end up winning the conference. BYU didn't win the conference, but they ended up being one of the definitely top 3 teams in the league, maybe 2, depending on your opinion of them versus Iowa State. But, it's a schedule that's definitely one that kind of gets tougher on paper as you get into the late October, November part of it. But even down the stretch those last couple of weeks, Cincinnati and UCF, they got a lot of proving to do to make me fear those games if I'm BYU. So, yeah, it's that Utah at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, home against TCU block with a bye week in there that I think will maybe be their toughest stretch. But, if West Virginia's a lot better, then maybe that throws a wrench in their plans earlier. They do avoid, and I give them credit, they play 10 power conference games. I think that was in their write-up. You do have some first-time matchups, as I mentioned, but you also will have some teams that you're not playing, and that will include where did that go? I just had that a second ago. That will include Baylor, obviously. They're not playing them. So on paper, that's probably a good team to avoid because they look like they'll likely be in the upper part of the schedule. You don't play Arizona State, so that's good. You don't play Kansas State. That's good. You don't play Houston. It probably doesn't matter. Oklahoma State.
God knows who
probably
they
doesn't
are.
matter.
Brett Blake could help us out.
But it could. You don't know. But, yeah, I think you're happy to not play Arizona State, Baylor, or Kansas State just in terms of your overall record. So those are teams that you could very well – if you were to do like a bet of the field versus K-State, Arizona State, and Baylor making the Big 12 championship game, I think they'd probably have some people maybe place it on those 3.
A parlay, right?
So, yeah, I think they were fortunate there. And yeah, they'll get some first-time meetings.
It's interesting that you end the season with a non-conference bowl game against a conference team, and that's the first team you play to open up conference the next year. It's just weird how things like that seem to open up.
Well, that sets a storyline in motion to really play up the fact that you did play just recently. But, yeah, they will play West Virginia for the first time as far as the is this their 3rd year in the Big 12 now, right? Yeah, because last year was the first year. So as far as the teams that weren't on the schedule last year, and I don't remember 2023 off the top of my head, but they will play West Virginia, Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, Cincinnati. They did not play them last year. And obviously Iowa State ended up being very good. Tech and TCU were feisty, and who knows how those games would have gone. And then West Virginia and Cincy. West Virginia – Cincy, you probably feel like you still would have won those games. But, it's a solid schedule, especially as you get later and deeper into it. But that's just on paper, of course.
2023, their conference games included KU, Cincinnati, TCU, and Tech, UT, West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so they played most of those teams, if not all of those teams.
So there we are that's BYU coming off what was a just phenomenal year.